Earl Children's Real Estate Investments will teach you how to build wealth through real estate. Learn step by step how to become a real estate investment empire through wholesaling and flipping residential and commercial properties. Be a boss, take over the block by becoming a real estate investor. Learn more at www.earlchildrens.com.
Hey, Ray, hand me that AR.
We're now listening to Off the Rip.
Off the Rip, hardest podcast out right now. It's your boy Earl, the artist.
Yes, sir. You got staff here, man, and we were one of them ones. We were one of the GOATs of the city, a legend. We got Coach Reed here. He do a little bit of everything from coaching to news to helping people get scouted. You know, just one of them leaders in the community that's been a part of just the kids on the football and just the leadership roles. We just thankful here to have him here today with us, man. How's it going, Coach Reed?
Man, it's good to be here, man. I like your setup, man. I'm happy to be here with you guys today, man, and I look forward to the conversation.
Appreciate that. For the folks who don't know, who should know, who is Carl Reed?
You know, man, I feel like I'm just a regular guy from North County, man. You know, I coached a little football. You know, I work now with 24/7 Sports, man. I just try to really blend in, man, and show appreciation to the people that help me and look out for kids in different avenues when I can.
Okay. So, Coach, how did you get into football? How did that start?
Hold on. Before you get in there, let's talk about your upbringing in St. Louis. You know, let's get a little bit even from childhood and growing up. Like, what are some obstacles you had to overcome growing up in the city?
I'll be honest with you, man. I didn't have a lot of obstacles to overcome. I had great parents. I went to Hazelwood Central High School. You know, when you talk about in our community, you got to talk a lot about breaking generational curses and things like that. I was fortunate to be in a situation where my father did that, you know, and so my father was the one who broke all the generational curses for our family. So it made the pathway for my brother and I a little bit easier because he did that. So we didn't have to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and he continuously put us in situations for us to be successful in. So you go from that, you know, he moved us over to Hazelwood Central because at the time they had one of the premier football programs. And so I got to play there and build a lot of relationships and take it from there to college, man. And things worked out pretty good for me. But what it did is what my father did for me. He showed me the importance of handling your responsibilities.
Yeah.
Because when you handle your responsibilities, you give your kids opportunities to do things that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do.
That's real, Coach. You preaching right there. So let's talk about college then. What college did you go to?
I went to Austin Peay State University, Ohio Valley Conference, which now they're not in there anymore. Matter of fact, Lindenwood just took their place, you know, in the realignment of several conferences. But I had a great experience there. I had great coaches. We didn't win a lot when I was there, but the relationships that I was able to build with not just my coaches, but my teammates are things that I can still lean on to this day.
Yeah, that's dope. So let's kind of go back a little bit. Like, how did you get into football? How did you find your love for football?
Well, you know, in the neighborhood, I grew up in Heatherton, you know, and so everybody played football at the time because, you know, Heatherton was a neighborhood that back then was all the kids went to Hazelwood East, you know, and right before I started high school, my parents moved from Heatherton to Barrington Downs. But when you grew up in Heatherton, you know, football was your game. Mm-hmm. So I had an opportunity to play and really get into it, get focused on it. And then once you went and played at Central with all the great players that we had, you know.
Let them know, Coach.
All the teams we had, because everybody does know Hazelwood Central is the mecca of football in the St. Louis area.
Talk to them.
So the experience that you had there, it was going to make football really a permanent part of your life if you chose it that way.
Mm-hmm. Real talk. So, Coach, after college and all your experience, how did you get into coaching? How did that come along?
So when I got done playing in college, you know, like a lot of guys, I was kind of lost on what to do next. I had done some security at a couple of clubs, and you know, you just really kind of trying to find your way. And my college coach actually set me up with an assistant coaching job up there in the area in Tennessee, and it just kind of took off from there. You know, trying to help some kids and trying to give them some of the experiences that I had and knowing what the game can do for you it put me in a position to really want to help guys, and I got really attached to it from there.
Yeah. So how did you? How long was you coaching in other areas before you decided to bring your coaching challenge back to the home?
So I coached in Tennessee for 10 years,
Mm.
Florida for 2 before I came back to St. Louis, and so like when I got started, so a lot of young people not gonna realize this. I grew up in an era where you did what you were told, right?
Okay.
So my college coach told me to coach, so I coached.
Yeah.
He told me what jobs to take, and I took the jobs I took. And so I had a really good run in Tennessee. I had a good run in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was going through an ugly divorce.
Mm.
And so we were tripping. It was a
Yeah.
lot going on. And so one of my high school coaches from Central, he really made me come back to St. Louis.
Mm.
I got the head job at University City High School, and that brought me back to the area. And then that's what I've been on probably the last decade here in St. Louis.
Mm. So how did the opportunity to coach at Luther North come about?
So I was at Hazelwood West, and Brian Simmons was the coach at Luther North prior to me, a really close friend of mine, and he was leaving to go take another opportunity. And he actually is the one who recommended me for the job. And so from that point on, at first I said no. The first time they had contacted me, so I wasn't a certified teacher. And so at the time I was doing in-school suspension at Hazelwood West, and I wasn't going to leave because I really liked the team that I had coming back. And I thought we were about to do something really special at Hazelwood West.
Mm-hmm.
And so the school district at that point, they made a decision that all the ISS teachers who were not certified teachers, they cut all our jobs.
Mm.
And so I needed a job.
Yeah.
So then I called Luther North back, and the job was still open. I went and met with him, and the rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
But if that wouldn't have happened in Hazelwood, I would have never went to Luther North.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm my bad. Go ahead.
I was about to say, so I know you coached in other areas before you came back to St. Louis. What was the difference between like Tennessee and Florida kids and coaching the St. Louis kids? What was like the difference?
It's not the kids that are the difference. The top kids from here could go to Florida, and they'll be just fine. The difference is the emphasis on football is different.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go down into the South, Tennessee, Florida, the Texases, the Alabama, Arkansas, they have spring practice.
Mm-hmm.
They have weightlifting class.
Mm-hmm.
They have a different structure. The youth football structure is different.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a situation where the head high school coach is responsible for the football program from the varsity level down through the elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different level of focus. It's a different level of accountability.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go down there and lose. You're going to get fired. But you could be at a program here and lose for a long time. And it just is what it is. So it's just a different level of focus and seriousness. And they say this a lot, and it turns cliche, but down there it just means more.
Mm-hmm. So the kids aren't any different, you think? Like
any kid that's been a great player here could go down to any of the powerhouse programs in the South, and they would be the same. They probably even have more notoriety because the stage is a little bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But from a top, think about it. Think about the guys from St. Louis who have went to college and made huge impacts. They compete against those type of guys, so they'd have prolific careers still if they were in those situations.
And what about this, the way they act, like, coming out of St. Louis, we kind of get a bad rep. Are they a little bit more disciplined out there or here?
Well, it just depends on where you're from and the circumstances that you're under, right? So if you got a kid from Dade County in Miami, he might be fighting some of the same issues that a kid from North St. Louis is fighting. So more so than where you from, it's probably the way you living and the circumstances that you had to grow up. And kids get a lot of bad rap, but some kids, man, are just in positions where, they fighting just to make it to the other side. And so the great coaches are understanding of that as you're trying to help those guys through those processes. And I think that as a leader, you have to be able to look at what some of those kids are going through and do everything you can to try to reach them.
So before you came back to St. Louis, did you ever win a state chip in Tennessee or Florida?
I won a state championship coaching basketball, actually, in 2007. And so that was kind of a weird situation. We had a situation where they needed a basketball coach to fill in, and we kind of built that thing pretty quickly and got a lot of talented players. My brother is in the Hall of Fame at Austin P basketball, so we had a run with that. And in football, we came close a couple of times, but we didn't do it. But winning the state championship is difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, no matter the sport.
So how was that feeling, coaching, winning your first one as a basketball coach?
I've been a part of one as a player at Central. It's more of a relief than anything else, because when you're that good, when you're good enough to win a championship, and you don't win it, you know how the critics are, right? And at that point in my life, I was 27 years old there. So at that point in my life, I was still really emotionally invested in what people thought in a way that I'm not today. And so at that point in time, it was more of coaching with both your middle fingers in the air. And so you mature through that, and different experiences give you different things. But I think one of the hardest things to overcome for young coaches and for young people in general as they continue to grow is not worrying about what everybody else thinks. And as soon as you can release yourself from that, you're going to have a lot more success than when you're caring about how people feel.
And what changed for you through the years in just maturing? What experience did you have and not really taking into the critics anymore?
The winning puts you around a different circle of people.
Yeah.
The more success you have, the more high quality people you get to be around. So as you transition into those circles, and you're tripping off of certain things, you actually look crazy when you get into that new room. So when you go into a room with the guys that are at the top of the game, and you're really dedicated to nonsense and foolishness, they look at you and you feel almost embarrassed sometimes that you're worried about some of the things that you're worried about. So I think that for me, as I started to put myself in a position where I was entering those rooms, it changed my perspective because of the knowledge that I started to get and the things that I started to receive from those people that are at the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
That's deep, Coach.
So let's kind of take a couple steps back to Luther North. Like getting there, what was like some of the challenges off rip you had to face and overcome? I know they needed a lot of help. I could be bitter because I come from Trinity and all, but
we had some of a good run against Trinity.
Yeah.
We played them 5 times. We beat them 4. We should have beat them all 5, right? But that's another conversation for another day. All right, but every job that you have is going to have its challenges, right? You got to deal with kids that are coming from some really rough situations. They have to pay tuition regardless of what everybody thinks. So if the tuition gets crazy for them, they're not going to be able to play. They're not going to be able to attend school. And then just the expectations, because at Luther North, they expect for you to win. And they expect for you to compete for championships. That's one of the few schools in the area that has that level of expectation. It's probably 5 or 6 programs that really expect for you to win. And so as you're going through that and you're coaching the kind of kids that you coaching, some really elite players, just finding a way to win, finding a way to keep all the kids focused, because the difference in coaching a private school and a public school, when you play at a public school, everybody grew up together, so there's some familiarity. There's familiarity with the parents. There's familiarity with the kids. When they come from in the private school, they're all coming from different places. So you're trying to get them to work as a team, and that's not as easy as it looks. Everybody thinks that it's easy, but it's much harder than that.
yeah. So talk about familiarity. Were there any egos? And it didn't have to be just at Luther North, but like, have there been any egos while trying to coach these players, and has that always been like ongoing challenge to kind of like get these players to jail?
Anytime you put men in the room, ego always becomes an issue. I don't care what you do. As you guys continue to grow this show and you get more sponsors, you get more notoriety, you get on bigger platforms, egos are coming into equation here too. The thing is with egos is how do you handle it? It's egos amongst the coaches. It's egos amongst the parents. It's egos amongst the kids. But if you're a true leader you have to be able to make it good for everybody, because if it's only good for you and it's not good for anybody else, it's not a situation that you're going to be able to sustain anyway. And so you have to be able to make things make sense, and you have to understand what everybody's goals are, and you have to put everybody on a track where they can reach their goals. And at some point, their goals may require them to not be with you anymore, right? Eventually, your assistants are going to want to become head coaches. So I've had 14 assistant coaches who are head coaches now, but you have to be willing to help them. You have to be willing to let them go. You have players who have certain goals. Well, maybe this is not the best. If that's your goal, maybe this is not the best place for you to be, because you're not going to be able to do that here. And the key to it is you have to be extremely honest with everybody. You might think that you're good enough to play here, but the reality is you're only good enough to play there, and so you have to be willing to have those conversations. And most people are very uncomfortable having conversations that they know is going to result in a disagreement. So that's, to me, what separates a lot of people in terms of the success that they can have.
Yeah. So what is like the toughest type of player to coach?
The toughest kind of player to coach is the same as the toughest kind of person to deal with in anything in life. It's somebody who wants something for nothing. And it's
What does that mean, Coach?
what it means is it's somebody who thinks that they can get something without paying the price. That you can skip practice, that you cannot be dedicated to what needs to happen, that you could not do your schoolwork, but you still think some type of way you're going to end up playing football at Alabama. That's the closest person. It's a person who they want to raise at the job. They want to make $100,000, $200,000, but they aren't committed to being on time to work every day, or staying late, or going the extra mile. But they feel somehow that they deserve success. Those are the hardest people to deal with, because they're not living in reality. And anybody that's not living in reality is going to cause some type of dysfunction in any situation that you include them in.
Yeah. So what do you think kind of breeds those players? Do you think it's just the social media era that we're living in, or you think it's just outside influences? You think it's how
They were like that when I played. So everybody thinks that kids are different now, and social media makes it different, and that's not true. We had lazy players when I was playing. We had guys that wasn't realistic about what their talent level was when I was playing. We had uncoachable guys when I was playing. The big difference is that the rules were so different that you just kind of had to deal with whatever hand that you were done at the time, because it wasn't the movement. Because they're allowing you to have movement now, those guys are able to do some things. But I'm not really critical of the players, man, because if we had the transfer portal when I was young, then a lot of us would have transferred in too. We just wasn't able to do that. And so now we're being very critical of kids who have the options that we didn't have the courage to stand up and fight for.
And I see you, Coach, you big talking about like transfer portal on like social media and stuff. What's your thoughts on the transfer portal itself? Like, can you get in depth with that? Do you think it's more of a good or bad thing?
I think it's situational. I think sometimes it is good. Sometimes you need a fresh start. Sometimes, moving on is a good thing, but it can also be very bad. And it can be very bad if you're not really good enough. So the problem that most players have, and the hardest thing for them to accept, is that most of them are not good enough. They're just not the player that they think they are. And it's tough because they're so committed to what their goal is in terms of where they think they should be. Their parents have probably sacrificed money for training or teams, and they go in and they say, well, I feel like I deserve to be this guy, but you're just not good enough. You're not good enough to play in the SEC or the Big Ten or to make a major impact. But it is, you are having the opportunity to get your college degree for free, which still has a lot of value. There's a lot of people that have thousands and hundreds of thousands of debt and student loans that wish that they were able to leave college with a degree in hand with no debt and being able to start with life. And so when you start having those conversations can become contentious. People can get upset, and they can, it can even ruin relationships in some regards because they like, well, coach, you don't believe in me. It's not that I don't believe in you. I just believe what I see, right? And my eyes don't lie to me.
Yeah.
You don't look elite when you out there with other elite guys.
Yeah.
You look pretty good, when you playing against a bunch of scrubs. But when you out there with other guys that are really elite, you don't look the same. Your weight room numbers aren't the same. Your work ethic isn't the same. And a lot of guys get to college and they get defeated by one of these three things. They get defeated by math, they get defeated by weed, and they get defeated by girls.
Right?
Priest, coach.
So when any of those three things get a hold of you, then that can turn things around for you too.
Yeah.
Math, weed, and girls takes more people off track than anything. And so most people are not willing to deal with the truth of the matter, and so now you're like, well, I'm going to jump into the transfer portal because this guy doesn't like me. When you go in the transfer portal, and then you have the same issue at a different place, right? Yeah. You have the same issue. You still can't pass math. You still smoking too much weed, and you still a fool. It's just a different girl, right? And so you look at all of those things, man, and that's what ruins most guys when they get put in those situations. And they don't think it through. They don't get good advice. They become very emotional. And men are just in a situation in life where if you're a man and you run your life by emotions, man, you're going to have a really, really hard time in life. And people don't like you saying that to guys today. They call that toxic masculinity. I think that's what they call it now.
Yeah.
But whatever you call it, you better not do it if you want to have any success.
Yeah. So now, what do you say to those players that's kind of been bred since they was little, saying only way you can go to the NFL is you just go D1, D1, D1. It's kind of like been drilled into these kids' head.
I don't talk to my kids a lot about the NFL because it's just not a realistic path for many of them, whether they go D1 or not. There's a lot of guys that go D1 and start every game, and they never play in the NFL, right? I was with a couple of guys from Clemson a while back that are guys that started at Clemson for 3 or 4 years and they didn't play in the NFL, so I think that when you start talking about the NFL, people don't realize, man, that it's really the best of the best. It's only a handful of jobs in that league, and you can be a really good player no matter what level you play at. And the difference in the NFL also, the NFL has the most extensive scouting system of any sport in the world. There's nobody who spends the amount of resources on scouting and evaluation that the NFL does. If you're good enough to play in the NFL, there's no way possible for you to be overlooked. I don't care what school you play at. If you're good enough to play in the National Football League, you will not be overlooked. I promise you that they will find you. And if they don't find you, guess what that means? Then you're not good enough. That's just the truth.
Well, I was gonna say that's deep, coach. So, coach, on the leadership and wisdom aspect, who was you around? Who was like your mentors, your inspirations? Because like I see you on social media every day, especially like Twitter and Facebook. You really when I was in college playing ball and stuff, playing basketball, like your Twitter was like always like notifications on because you always was saying some real stuff every day. Where did you get that knowledge? Who inspired you? Who was your mentors to really put that into you? Who put that wisdom into you growing up through your life? What did you go through?
First, I had to say my father. My father is a man that accepts no excuses, right? And so there was a certain standard that you had to meet, right out the gate. Him, and I had great uncles, so a lot of my wisdom and my initial thought process came from the men in my family. The second thing is my father always made sure that I was with the best people for whatever we were doing. If you were going to play football, he would spend a lot of time researching who the best coach was. And then he would put you in that situation. And if you couldn't handle that situation, then football wasn't your game, right? So he was going to continuously force you to be around the best people. And if you continue in life to be around the best people, eventually the magic will keep happening because you'll keep matriculating and rising to meet the other great people that you have to meet. I can honestly say that in my entire life, I've never been around bad men.
Right, you give us a lot of wisdom right now.
I've never had a bad coach. I've never been around anybody who wasn't the best at what they did. I've never been around anybody who wasn't up to par because my father just didn't allow that. He spent hours, days, years, weeks researching, watching the right people. And so then in turn, you always got to be around the right people. And if you're around the right people, when you graduate from them, guess what? They're going to continue to put you around the right people. So I've just never been in a situation like, I know that there's been some horror stories and some guys have had bad coaches, some guys have had bad situations. I've never experienced that, which is why it's so important for the father to be involved in every aspect of his kid's life, because those are decisions that you need your father to be there to help you make and to put you in those situations. So I've never done anything with anybody who it's been no bad business. It's been none of that. And so I just didn't have to overcome some of those things, man, because my steps were really, really guided from the very beginning on, and everything became, it was just prosperity, man.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a positive message. Me and Steph kind of joke about this all the time. Like, sometimes it ain't what you know, but who you know. And sometimes those people can, you know, help you get a certain place, and you can kind of help them in certain places. And like, if your personality can help shine you through a room, then, you know, people are willing to just help you out in certain instances. So, talk about like have the reason behind having like a good personality as a player and being, and the reason being to being marketable, because some of these players, they may think all their game is just to be cold on their court or on the field, but not to have that personality behind them as well.
Well, you want to be a good person first and foremost. Yeah. You know, because I told this to my son once, and I told this to two guys that played for me that were having a rough time at the time. And I said to them, people will deal with this nonsense that you're doing as long as you can play football at an extremely high level. As long as you can play like the way you playing right now, people will deal with the BS that you're doing. But the second that you done playing football, right, then life is going to hit you like a ton of bricks. Nobody going to tolerate it. Everything that you've ever got in trouble for, right, is gonna be magnified, and you're gonna have to still deal with the kind of person that you are. Being a good person, man, and just being solid and being a man of your word and having integrity, man, is gonna last you much longer than your ability as a player. Because with the exception of a very few great players, most people won't agree that you're a good player anyway. There'll always be some. If the three of us are in a room and we looking at 10 guys, then all of us may have a different opinion on who the best guy is, right? So a guy may come in here feeling like, man, I'm him, and then we might just cut. Yeah. You know, well, how are you gonna deal with that? Well, nobody likes you. Guys want money. Guys want great jobs. They want great careers. They want great sponsorship for the things they're trying to do, but nobody likes you. Nobody wants to be in a room with you for longer than 10 minutes. And so you think that you're going to get some business done. My mother always taught me that people can make a decision to just not deal with you. What happened if you call me to interview and I just say no because I don't like you? Right? What happens if you call somebody and they just say, hey, I just prefer not to do business with you. I don't like the way that you maneuver. I don't like the way you move. And so and everybody's not going to like you. But you want people, if they don't like you, you want them to just be haters, and they have it for no reason. But you never want anybody not to like you just because you are riding dice. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that you're in alignment with doing things the way that you're supposed to do them. And I think that that's really key as you're trying to move forward in life. Yeah.
So how do you even teach that? Like two players, like do players even sometimes they have like a riding core attitude, they just feel like it doesn't matter to me, right?
Well, you got to make it matter to them because they're still the kids, right? And so a lot of times they don't even know that they have a problem. As the adult, you kind of trying to make it, you know, you the way you acting is not acceptable. Okay, when you telling me, right, that you want to play Division I football, but the English teacher's telling me you haven't turned in an assignment in 2 weeks. So what are we talking about, right? And so then what's going to happen is your mama's going to come up here clowning at the trying to get you to do makeup work and saying that everybody didn't treat you fairly. But really, you didn't treat yourself fairly. You never gave yourself a chance. How can you say that you want to go to college, knowing that you have to pass these classes, but you haven't done any work, right?
Yeah.
Well, so what are we talking about? Do you really want to play or not? Well, you don't want to play. I know that you're telling me that you do.
Yeah.
And I know that it sounds really incredible, you know, when you're talking to your cousins and your aunties and all of them at Christmas, you know, time. I went for 30 last night, but it doesn't really matter because you know in 2 weeks when you get back to school in January, that report card coming and you're not going to be able to play the second semester. You already know that, right? And you feeling uneasy about it because you know that it's coming, right? And so then you're going to act like somebody did something to you, or that somebody put some kind of obstacle in the way. Well, you your own obstacle. You self-check. I don't even have to deal with you. I know you won't be there at the end. You self-check.
He called himself.
Yeah, there's not a problem with it. You defending, you guarding yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even have to entertain that situation because you are exactly what you are. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. You know, I've coached players who have been very good players, but they not committed to school and they never make it. Because it's eventually that math gonna put you in a chokehold.
Yeah.
Right? It's gonna put you in the chokehold. That English gonna put you in the figure four. Right? All right? And that science gonna put you in the full Nelson. And then the history gonna body slam. Right? And so, but you gotta deal with that.
Yeah.
Like no matter whether you want to or not, you have to be able to deal with that. And so everybody thinks that they can fake their way around that. Oh, well, this person don't like. So what if they don't like? Maybe the English teacher don't like. What does that have to do with your prepositions and punctuation? Right? If you know what 2 + 2 is, it doesn't matter if the
You gotta use the right.
yeah, you got. So you know we make a lot of excuses, man. Especially kids from our community, we make a lot of excuses. And then when we get into a situation, we say, oh man, they hated on me. Y'all know guys like this. You see them all the time. I should have went D1. They slept on me. They hated on me. You know, and really the reality is when you pull the curtains back and you look deep into the situation, they self-check. You know, they did it to themselves.
And so, Coach, I've talked to a lot of, I've been around some good coaches as well, college and stuff. And a lot of people I don't know if we got a bad name here in St. Louis, but a lot of coaches, they like St. Louis, but they know like getting a kid from St. Louis comes with a risk. Like what are kids doing here that put coaches in like a scared mode? Like we're talented, but they're scared to bring us on campus because they don't know how we gonna turn out.
Because they bring that St. Louis nonsense outside of St. Louis. You know, one of the things that kids from here have to understand is that the skill set that it takes to survive in St. Louis is not the same skill set that it takes to survive on a college campus.
Mm-hmm.
So once you get to college, if you bring the nonsense, you're not going to last there.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't like high school where you get in a fight, they suspend you for 3 days and bring you back to school and everything is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody on college wants fighting.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want you selling weed out your dorm room.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They don't want you involved in those things. And so you get a lot of that when you bring a certain demographic of kids. And so you got to be really, really careful if you're a college coach at this time in the game more probably than any other time in life because there's so many, you can get counseled, you know, and you can get like one decision that one of your players makes can cost you. It used to be a day when what the coach said was law.
Mm-hmm.
Coach can handle all of the situations, but they can't do that anymore. You can give a really rough kid an opportunity back in,
Mm-hmm.
but now giving kids those same shots can cost you your job
Mm-hmm.
if you don't, if it doesn't go well.
Mm-hmm. And so, Coach, well, I know what I'm gonna say. You say you're not a recruiter, right, Coach? That you say you're not. But what I'm gonna say, word on the street is you might be one of the best recruiters, best helpers in the country. I'm being real. Like what I'm gonna say, that's what word on the street saying. They saying you done help more kids than the main recruiters. And it's the connections. How did you develop them connections to get kids on college campuses and get kids in high school?
You know, man, you can't listen to the word on the street. if it's one thing, man, the people that get the word on the street, man, they lie a lot, man. You know, but I would say this. Me and Corey Patterson was sitting on my patio at my house one day. This was probably in 2015 or 16. And we just made a decision that we were going to take our kids all over the country and challenge the very best players in the country. So we loaded up Perkins, and he had Marcus Washington, and Isaiah, and I had Perkins, Ruffin, and Doyle, and all.
Talking about this, is this like the future era?
No, we were in high school then.
Okay.
That's when they were all in probably 9th or 10th grade.
Yeah.
And then we said, where's all the smoke at? Right? So if you told me that the best lineman in the country was in Texas, then I was going to put Perkins in the car, and we was going to pull up in Texas. And, may the best man win. And so we did that for probably 3 or 4 years. We probably touched 60 or 70 college campuses, during that time. And so that's how those relationships were built. We actually took our kids and made them prove, that they could play at that level, and so that's what positioned us, and in turn, there was some trickle effect from the city. And I think too that Darren Sunkett was doing that years ago, taking his guys out, showing them. We were always willing to prove it and put it on the field and see who the best was. And I think that's what separated us. I know that's what separated me from other people. I was always willing to put the kid in a position to show that he was who I said he was.
Yeah.
And then also, Coach, how did you even get these high major coaches like Deion Sanders, Nick Saban to even look your way into letting your kids pull up?
Results. At some point, it's like I told you at the beginning of the show, man, when you have success and as you continue to rise, you get put in some rooms around other people that are highly successful. In the same way that you notice them, if you're doing your thing, they're going to notice you too, right? And it'll all come together and it'll all happen. So if you competing at an elite level, and that's just not in sports, man, that's in anything that you do. There's somebody right now that is doing a podcast just like y'all that 18 months from now they're gonna be stars, right? They're gonna have, but you got to put the time in, you got to put the work in, you got to have consistency, you got to have good content, you got to do good business, and if you continue to do those things, I promise you, all the right doors are gonna open for you. And it seems like magic, but it ain't magic. It's just work, it's excellence, and it's doing what you need to do to consistently be the best that you can be.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit right here. You've been in the loop for a little minute, so who would you say, in all your experience of coaching, top 5 hardest football players you done seen grace the city?
All right.
With everything you listed earlier, you said attitude, grades, and they had skill.
I'm much older than you. So I go back a little bit, but the best player that I ever saw in person was probably Isaac Bird that played at Parkway Central. And for people who don't know who Isaac Bird was, he played at Kansas, and he also played Major League Baseball with the Cardinals, and he played wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans. He was on the Tennessee Titans team that the Rams beat in the Super Bowl. He played in 7 state championship games at Parkway Central in football, basketball, and baseball. He was the MVP of every one. So he was a phenomenal athlete to watch during his time. Obviously, probably the standard, the 2 guys that I've seen tape on them, but I didn't see him play, is Tony Van Zandt and Anthony Stafford from Hazelwood Central and Sumner High School. Damian Nash, R.I.P. to Didi, was as good as anybody who's come out the area. And then you just got to think, it's just so many guys. You got Cortland Johnson at Hazelwood Central. You got Ricardo Rose from East. It's just been a lot of really good players. And I haven't even gotten to the guys that's played in the last 10, 15 years. Just talking about them.
Yeah. So if you could go out right now and build you like an all-star, I guess you can say coach roster, you can just give us like 5 coaches. Like, who would you call without a hesitation that you just need absolutely on your staff?
Can you get them? Well, number one, you had to be like, can you get them to leave doing what they doing?
Yeah.
You got to go with Darren Sunkett. I think that Darren Sunkett has been the premier coach in the area. him and Scott Pingle, both. We've lost a lot of good coaches that are not coaching in high school anymore, too. The college guys like Robert Steeples and Corey Bethan, you know, Corey Patterson, you know, and those kind of guys, if you could get those guys to come back, you know. But it was a special run, man, in St. Louis football. When you think about the coaches that got to move on to do some bigger and better things, the players have been competing at a high level. It's been really good in St. Louis lately.
Talking about your highlights working with, you know, the CBS and 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, you know, it's more you get to talk about college football for a living. So, and then you get to meet a lot of great people, but I knew most of them already anyway. So it made kind of the transition easier for me. We're starting a new show coming up here at the beginning of January called The College Football Today. And I'm excited about that, you know, and kind of what that's going to bring. And so I'll be going back up to Nashville in a couple weeks to get that part of it figured out, you know. And so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, could you talk about a little bit of the contents about football today?
I don't really know what we're going to do. I got to have we got a media meeting next week. So I'll know more next week. So I'll keep y'all in the loop and let y'all know where you can see it and where you can watch it at.
Okay, cool. So who are some of the players that kind of got y'all right now that you've just been watching for leisure?
Some of the players that I think that are doing a really great job that I thought had big seasons that did a lot for themselves. I think DJ Coleman, the DN at the University of Missouri, was a guy that transferred there from Jacksonville State. I think he did a lot for himself, you know, in terms of the NFL draft and kind of putting himself in position. Felix Udoma, a DN out of K-State, was a guy that I was really, really impressed. The Ibrahim, the running back out of Minnesota, was a guy that I thought was very impressive this year. And so I thought that Hendon Hooker at Tennessee, up until he got hurt, was on pace, you know, to have a great season. If they don't blow the South Carolina game, he probably would have won the Heisman. So, I mean, it's so many great players, man. When you start talking about the top level of college football, there's always somebody knocking on the door.
Any surprises hit you from the transfer portal? Any ones that just hit you was like, wow, I can't believe they did that?
So Jared Verse to me, Jared Verse that plays at Florida State. So I tell people this all the time. So Jared Verse played at the University of Albany, which was a very, very small FCS school that was 1-10 a year ago. And so Jared Verse came out of high school at 200 pounds. He didn't have any, that was Albany partial scholarship was the only offer he had. He ends up getting 13 sacks and goes into the transfer portal. I see his film. I think his film is unbelievable. He ends up with 35 offers, right? So he goes to Florida State. He's the best player on Florida State's defense this year. Him and they got another great linebacker. Deloach is a great linebacker for them also. But Verse is now going to be a first-round pick in the draft if he comes out. Now, he was saying the other day he might stay in school, which, you know.
Because they paying him a lot of money.
Yeah, so.
He already getting the million.
Right. So, but he, those are the kind of, those things can happen.
Yeah.
But what I also tell people about Jared Verse, you talking about a guy that's got all A's and B's. He don't smoke weed. He works his butt off every single day. He stays out of trouble. He does the things that he's supposed to do, right? And so he puts himself in a position to have success. And so people will look at his situation and they'll say, well, I can do that, but I don't know if he can do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
See, now, Coach, I got a question. So I know you represent a lot of players. So what's players that you know how I know you got your phone that's probably blowing up every day. You got players that's extremely talented, but they might come with baggage. Do you still represent them players, or will you like turn down players if you know they're not gonna make it? Like you wouldn't even send a coach, you know what I mean? Send them to a coach.
So, you know, the hard part about being in my position is that you have to say no a lot because you can't help everybody and you can't work with everybody. Number one, it's not enough time in a day, but you do try to help when you can. You know, I think that, you know, people look at my my relationship with Ronnie Perkins, being his business manager, and I coached him in high school. But they had to understand that Ronnie been my ball boy since he was 9 years old. So
He trusts you. It's a trust there.
yeah, it's a different relationship. So I'm gonna always make time to do what he needs to be done. It's just it's a different deal entirely. Antonio Doyle is my godson in addition to having played for me. So it's a different relationship. But we have helped some other guys, get some other things and secure some NIL deals and things like that. But it just depends on if it's a situation that I feel like it's worth even dealing with, because most guys are not that serious, man, about their work. They want the money, but they don't want to do everything that you really got to do to secure your future in that way. So I do say no to guys a lot, that are looking for help. But I have said yes sometimes too if the stars line up, right?
Yes, sir. And if you don't mind me asking, how do you feel about the Dion going to Colorado?
Well, I was down there when all of that was going on, so it was a crazy situation. I think that he put himself in a position to have that decision to make, and that's all life is. You put yourself in position to be able to make those decisions when they come up. The University of Colorado, not only did they offer him an attractive package, they put him in the position to be able to change the lives of his assistant coaches, which is very, very important. And I think that what we have to look at that we're not looking at in our community is when you think of Jackson State is not comparable to Alabama, but that's what we're trying to do, and that's not a fair comparison. Jackson State is an FCS school. What's the best FCS school in the country? It's North Dakota State, who's won 9 out of the last 11 national championships. But guess what? Craig Bowl, who started the run, he left and went to Wyoming, right? Chris Kleiman, who picked up after Bowl, he left. Now he's the head coach at K-State. Well, white folks don't want to fight them. Jim Tressel was the coach at Youngstown State before he went to Ohio State. They don't want to fight him, right? But everybody in our community wants to fight Deion because, he made a similar decision. And that's the business of college football. I would hope that the SWAC and the MEAC conferences, CIAA, the SIAC, I would hope that they could get good enough coaches in there where the coaches were consistently up to bigger jobs, and where you can develop a system where it's elite football being played. And Deion brought elite level football to Jackson State.
Boom. So, kind of pivoting back to you, throughout your entire career process from going to Tennessee to back to St. Louis, would you do anything different? You have any regrets?
If I would do anything different in my career, I would have focused sooner, on what needed to happen, and I would have blocked the noise out. Now, what you do have to understand is that the process that you go through prepares you for where you at now and what's next. But I spent a lot of time fighting. I spent a lot of time in arguments and pettiness that if I had the time back, I would have left a lot of that alone. Because you realize that beef is bad for business, right? And so as you're going through some of those transitions, and every time somebody say something, you got to say, you talking to me? Who are you talking to?
Yeah.
What you say? If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have got involved in any of those, type of things. I would have just kept moving in accordance of the guidance that I was receiving. But those are things that you had to learn along your journey, the maturation process, because it's hard for people to ignore when they feel like they've been disrespected in some kind of way. And it's really, really tough. But I think that for the most part, you got to be able to do that, especially when it's a peon talking. Especially when it's somebody who you shouldn't be giving your time and attention to, but you are.
So what advice would you give to up-and-coming and young coaches that is looking to make an impact in the football community?
Do the work. It's a lot of work. And what I mean is by do the work, watch film, study the game, develop a system of play. But even more important than that, develop a way of leadership. Because ultimately, when people talk about coaches, the best coaches are the best leaders.
Mm-hmm.
People who can inspire someone to be the best version of themselves. People that have kindness, understanding, and patience. It's not always about how well you can coach the game. There's a lot of guys that know the game, but they can't get kids to operate and function in a way that's going to make them successful because they don't really care about the kids.
Mm-hmm.
They care about winning the game. And so until you can pour into the kids and really care about the kids, then you're going to struggle winning games.
Yeah.
Those guys got to know that they can depend on you for everything that they may need. They got to know that they can call you at 1, 2, 3 in the morning if there's some kind of problem, that you are the problem solver. And if you're not that guy, it's going to be really, really tough for you to succeed. And you should move out the way and let somebody else have that job.
Yeah, for sure.
For the kids, coach, what advice do you have for them?
Be about your work and understand that there's not going to be any opportunity that you're going to get that you don't earn.
Mm-hmm.
Ignore everybody who's telling you to do something that is counterproductive to what you say you want to be, right? And don't use your parents as a crutch. Don't use your parents as a crutch with teachers, as a coach. Do the work. Do the work, man. That's your schoolwork. That's your practicing. There's no excuses for you to be missing practice. If you got to babysit your brother or your sister, take them to practice with you. But you need to be there, and you need to be working, man, and you need to be on top of your game at all times. Behave in school. Be a guy that people want to help. When you behave in school, and when you're part of the solution and not the problem, C's magically turn into B's, B's magically turn into A's, D's magically turn into C's. When you're a person who is part of the solution and not the problem, you know, and stay away from they. Stay away. It's hard to break away from guys you grew up with. You grew up in the neighborhood with them. Guys that are not doing the things that you say that your goals are. It's just tough, man. But you gotta find a way to break away from that if you really want to make it. And there's a lot of talented guys in this city. It's a lot of talented guys all over the country that didn't make it just because they couldn't separate themselves from the nonsense and the foolishness. And so if I was a player, if I was talking to a group of kids, I'd tell them just to rise above the fray. You know, get your work done, be about your work. Being cool is being successful, because I can guarantee you the guy that ends up going to college, having some success, having a great job and driving, you know, or he doesn't necessarily have to have a job. You can be an entrepreneur. You can be working for yourself, but you got a nice house, a good life. You know, you're going to be the guy that they're going to be looking at anyway. And they would rather be like you than sleeping in your mama's basement when when you're a grown man. You said you ain't got nowhere to go. You don't want to leave that. You know, no offense, and all you guys are sleeping in your mom's basement. I don't mean no disrespect. All right, I don't need, but get out of there.
Hey, coach, you speak on stay away from they, and like even for us, I feel like we have troubles and we in our early 20s. Who, like, you know what I mean, be real, like, because I feel like we need advice on that. Growing up with people and we can't break away. How do you break through, or how do you know what I mean, work through them relationships? Like, do you keep them? Do you leave them? Like, be real, coach, because I feel like it's a lot of 50-50 with us with knowing who to be around and who not to be around. I feel like we need guidance in that area.
So, number one, you have to be strong enough to pull away, right? You have to be strong enough to, if you want to be, you want to have the best podcast in the country, for example, you want to be on TV and homes and all over the country. Well, there's certain things that you can't do. No different than if you are trying to be a ball player and you want to go to the NFL or the NBA, or you want to play at a major college. Well, there's certain things that don't go with that. So one of the taboo things, and sometimes people criticize me for saying that, but let's talk about it. One of the taboo things is smoking weed. There's a lot of people who think that there's nothing wrong with smoking weed and that it's not a big deal. And in theory, that is correct, okay? They've legalized it a lot of places, but guess where they haven't legalized it at? College football and basketball. You go to college football and play college basketball and smoke weed, they're going to suspend you. They're going to end your season, right? They're going to take you out of the game. And so if you know that you have a situation where you got to get a drug test, why would you go sit in the house where everybody is getting high, right? Well, that's a decision that you have to make for yourself, because nobody is putting a gun in your head and forcing you, to smoke a blunt when you know that you're going to have to take a drug test next week. So at the end of the day, that's a choice that you got to make for yourself. And if you're not strong enough to make those choices, then you won't make it. And that's just the fact of the matter is. And so you have to, it's tough because some of the people that are bad influences are your cousins, right? Some of them are your friends that you've been growing up with, and your mama is best friends with their mom, right? So by default, everything is, and when you separate from them, they're going to say, oh, he acting funny. Oh, you think you better than us? Oh, you acting brand new. I see you over there. You acting brand new. And so you feel a desire to respond to that, but you don't have to, man. The best thing sometimes to do is just to move away and go somewhere else. That's another conversation for another day. One day, another episode. But I would say that's the thing, man. You got to be strong to make it. You got to be a dog to make it, because most of your opposition is going to come from your circle. Most of the opposition that you have, the people outside your car is not the people who kill you. It's usually the person in your passenger seat. My uncle used to tell me, never trust anybody in your passenger seat or somebody that's in the same room as you. Those are the people that you're the most vulnerable and susceptible to harming you in those situations. So you have to be really careful about who you give your energy to and who you give your space to, because the people on the outside, they don't really know you, because they follow you on social media, or they might know. It's the people around you who, so if I gave you both $50,000 and you went and spent it on alcohol and women, and he invested it in stocks and real estate that turned his $50,000 into $5 million, you could grow resentment for him when the same opportunity was presented to both of us, and that creates jealousy and envy in itself. So a lot of guys in the same room with you that got coached by the same coaches, that were in the same situations, it's just the choices they made are different from the choices you made, and that changes everything.
Man, Coach, you talking that real, you spin gems. And the last question I got before we get up out of here is, what advice can you give to me and Earl specifically, and off the rip itself, to so we can get some of the best guidance and Coach Reed before we roll out? We need all of it, you feel me?
Film content every day. Be relentless in the amount of content you put out, and be super aggressive. Don't be scared to ask anybody for an interview. The only thing that they can do is say no or not respond, but be very aggressive and stay consistent. And and be honest with each other about how you feeling. Don't fight and not solve problems. Like, be able to communicate effectively with each other and solve problems, because most people that start off working together, at some point something happens that typically ends the relationship. Everybody ends up falling out, and then you got to start over from square one. Be honest, put the work in, do good business, be men of integrity, man, and honor. And then if you do all of those things, man, the best things in life will happen to you, man, and you'll be so abundantly blessed with the things that you're receiving in life, man. You won't even be able to keep track of the blessings.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate that, Coach. That's real.
How can the people find you, get in touch with you? Well, the players not to get in touch with you, but for the players that you probably won't, I ain't gonna say high caliber.
You global, Coach.
How do people find you?
I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. It's all the same, Coach Reed Live. You can hit me. If you DM me I will respond to you. I will give you some type of feedback, if you hit me. Coach Reed Live, that's Instagram, that's TikTok, that's Twitter, that's YouTube, everything. You can hit me that way. And if you know somebody that really knows me, it might give you an advantage, in what I'm willing to deal with. So, but no, reach out anytime, man. Especially, I'm gonna tell you the truth now. If you reach out to me, so be prepared to hear it like it is.
He gonna let you know if you're good enough.
I'm gonna talk to you, and I want to see your grades. So if you got bad grades, don't DM me. I don't want to hear no sob stories.
Don't waste your time.
Waste your time. All right.
Man, off the rip, hardest podcast out right now. If you haven't, go like, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we're on all sharing platforms. And if you haven't, go copy some merch off the offtheRip.com website. Just like that, we out.
Let's get it.